Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of The Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win, and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Today is a special episode of my series on new and emerging solutions called the Emerging Tech Series, and today's guest is Ian Karnell of VastAdvisor. Some of our past guests in this series have included Richard Rudy of Captain Compliance, Mark Ovaska of Precept, and Thomas Clausen of Slant CRM. And today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms processing. When your business relies upon processing forms, don't waste your team's valuable time manually reviewing the forms. Instead, get Quick. Using Quick, you'll be able to generate completed forms and get back clean, context-rich data that reduces manual reviews to only 1 out of 1,000 submissions. Visit quickforms.com to get started. All right, before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Mike Langford, founder of Podbox and host of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. In fact, I was just on a show. Go check out his website at podbox.com and learn more. All right, I have been looking forward to talking to Ian. Ian Karnell is the founder and CEO of VastAdvisor, an AI-powered growth operating system built for RIAs and enterprise wealth platforms that want to own, not rent, their growth. Yeah, let's talk about that. He focuses on replacing lead brokers, shallow attribution, manual marketing workflows with governed, learning-based systems that compound over time. With a background spanning wealth management, fintech, and growth strategy, Ian works at the intersection of AI, compliance, and go-to-market execution. All right. You know this, Ian. I always love talking to fellow entrepreneurs. So welcome to the Customer Wins.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, a double shout out to Mike Langford for the introduction. It's fantastic.
Super
Thank
awesome.
you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. So looking forward to this. So for my audience, if you haven't heard my podcast before, I just love to talk to business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. So Ian, let's understand your business a little bit better. How does your company help people?
Awesome question. Thank you. And thank you for having me on. Let's start with a hard truth. First and foremost, I think that most advisors don't actually have a growth strategy. They have referrals and they have vendors, right? And so when referrals slow down, the backup plan typically is they start buying leads from like the Smart Assets, the Zoes. They get agencies involved. And that's an expensive, shared, opaque, and it's impossible to compound. And so we exist to replace that entire model with something fundamentally different. And so when you think about the sector, every serious RIA has systematized investment management. Almost none have systematized organic growth. And we built VastAdvisor as a growth operating system, not a marketing tool that turns client acquisition into governed, repeatable systems for the RIA. So that's what we're doing.
That's complex. Let's unwrap that a little bit more.
Sure.
I just had Bill Cates, the growth referral coach, on the show with his books, talking about the referral engines and it being such a strong source of where you get growth from. So when you talk about a growth operating system, how does that fit into the advisor's world exactly? What are you taking from them and leveraging and making better?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm gonna address the whole referral thing. Yes, referrals have driven and have been a predominant channel for driving organic growth for all, nearly every advisor for over 100. I mean, since this sector, was born. So and obviously referrals are a big part of every market sector. That being said, we have about $87 trillion beginning to change hands from baby boomers to digital first generations that are nothing like their parents, that are nothing like their grandparents. So assuming past, kind of antiquated channels will continue to perform like they have, I think is a fundamental flaw in anybody's supposition about how growth is going to, kind of move forward with these new digital first generations. They act nothing like their parents. And nor do they value referrals the same way their parents did. And so that's a fundamental shift. Yep.
Can I validate that for a second? Because when I became an advisor, I joined my mentor in his business. Okay. Yep. all of his clients were his generation.
Right.
They had kids, maybe kids already in college. Here, I was just out of college. I didn't have kids. I didn't relate to all the things they're going through. And he thought, well, Rich, you're going to take their kids as clients. I didn't like their kids as clients.
So true.
So it didn't work.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Anyway,
So
keep going.
No. So I think fundamentally, accessing growth, organic growth, or participating in that $87 trillion wealth transfer needs, requires an advisor to think differently about tactics that they've used in the past. I mean, wealth is infamous for just being a laggard with any sort of digital transformation investment whatsoever. Kitches talks about this a lot, and he writes a lot of reports about it. And I think when you look at the next generation of advisor, they're thinking differently than their predecessors, which is refreshing, and it's great. They don't think about this business as a lifestyle business. They're looking at it completely in a different way, and they're thinking digitally about their practice, and they're thinking about digital channels, and they're looking at how do I embrace this next generation of wealth, and where do I find them? And so that's fun. So that's part one, is that we help advisors activate audience discovery. Like, what are their ideal client profiles using large data set, using wealth signals. And then we help them activate those audiences across all of the different digital channels that exist today. There are dozens of them. We all know the core ones, the LinkedIns, the Metas, the Googles of the world. But there are some exciting new ones like Reddit. And there are a vast number of self-directed, high net worth individuals that are in those Reddit channels, in Fortran channels. And these channels are releasing, or these platforms are releasing, targeting and media capabilities for the first time. I think that's going to be so there are new emerging digital channels all the time. And I think they're going to activate new opportunities for RIAs to access audiences that have been otherwise difficult to reach through digital channels. And so that's one of the things that we do to help them.
Do you know where I see Dave Ramsey the most?
Where?
TikTok.
TikTok. Yeah. Well,
it's the only place I see Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. I mean, so TikTok, it's interesting. Like my own, in some of my own investments that I've made, because I'm one of those self-directed individuals. I follow a number of analysts. Like, these are serious analysts, but I follow them on TikTok. And they're constantly in my feed. And I validate these insights that they provide through a multitude of other ways as well, through a multitude of different LLMs that I utilize to validate facts. But that's where I am. That's how I generate my own investment thesis, and where I've made my own investments. I've done quite well utilizing those two methods. And I think I'm in good company with other self-directed investors utilizing these channels. And I think it's just untapped by advisors.
Yeah.
And so we want to, that one of the things of many things that we're doing, we want to help them target those individuals.
Okay. So when you talked about ideal client profile, are you taking what is their current profile and figuring that out for them? Or are you helping them assess that and realize, oh, I have a better profile I could go after?
Yeah. So great question. So initially, when a client onboards with us, one of the very first experiences that they have is you register with our site, and they're asked to enter the URL of their RIA into our website. So once they hit submit, it activates a number of agents and sub-agents and workflows that have been built to power VastAdvisor. Those agents crawl the advisor's websites. They look at their LinkedIn profile. It does a Google search on the advisor, as well as it looks at the Form ADV. And I like to view it as it is the foundational institutional knowledge that we're capturing, which is all of the publicly available large, information about that RIA, through large language models and through internet search. And we're ingesting it into our database. And we're utilizing it a number of different ways. We utilize it to pre-configure our application. So their compliance settings get set automatically. their firm information gets set automatically, their firm fee rate gets set automatically. But another thing that happens is that we preload in what we infer as 3 ideal client profiles. So we have a number of agents just dedicated to ingesting this data, looking at various wealth signals, enriching with various other third-party research about that client segment, be it Pew Research or Boston Consulting Group. And then we look at the firm's geolocation. We look at the firm's how the firm positions its offering. There are some firms that are very specific about which niches it wants to target. We evaluate how competitive those niches are. When I say we, these agents do it in a matter of minutes. And it presents to the firm 3 ideal client profiles. Now, with robust psychographic, demographic, and geographic insights about that particular profile. So it's not just kind of broad segmentation. We get into what are the key pain points with respect to this ICP? What are their key values and motivators? We surface all of this data. By the way, we also source where we get this data from. And we also allow the firm to click Add ICP meaning ideal client profile, and we give the firm the ability to describe their own ideal client profile, or we give them the ability to click into the 3 that we load in and refine it. So we have some firms that may want to refine the AUM. We have some firms that may want to refine the geographic profile of that audience. Maybe they only want to target Massachusetts and not New England, that sort of thing. And that changes the data. It changes the profile significantly sometimes. So that's the first thing that we help them do, is really understand who are you targeting and what represents the ideal client profile for your firm. It goes way beyond AUM and household income, way beyond it. So
does your system ever get it so wrong it's obvious, like laughingly wrong?
No, it hasn't. Now, and there's a reason for that, by the way. We've taken steps. Governance is a core component of our value proposition. Yeah. You go to our website, you'll see governance everywhere. And there are steps that we've taken to build observability into every single AI-generated insight or outcome, and measure that and audit that. And those are all immutable, by the way. So that's really, really important, not just from a compliance perspective. It's important from a AI perspective. We didn't want to just build a wrapper around a publicly available LLM. We're building learning systems. And so it's really, really important that we mitigate hallucinations, we mitigate drift, we mitigate latency and costs related to all of that. So we've taken the steps to really make the smart investments to do all of those things so that the results are reliable. Not to say that they're perfect. To the extent that they're not perfect, we have systems to be able to catch that and learn from that before it becomes something that is an issue, like something so grossly amiss on behalf of the RIA. Now, the RIA might say, well, I think about my segmentation differently, and we give them the ability to modify it and then retrain it, or just build something from scratch. But we haven't seen major misses at all. So,
okay, I got to bring this out to the open, because a lot of people in this industry are super focused on, I need an agent to do my job, or this job or that job, right? The agentic workforce is real. People want it. And that's why we see all sorts of hype and super fast interest. And like I've had Parker from Jump, I've had Mark from Zox on here, et cetera. Yep. Those guys have taken off faster than I've ever seen in this industry. Yep. You are actually talking about something that a lot of people, I don't think, see or understand. And that is the orchestration of a lot of agents together to do different things. Now, I'm personally doing that from a software development standpoint. Yep. And my own example is, if I have an agent write code, how do I know it wrote the code I needed? Right. You can test it and say, oh, did it work? But how do I know it really followed the specification? You can introduce other agents who come in and verify, check, right? You can use different language models.
Validation agent. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do that.
So,
yes.
Talk about that. How are you doing that? How did you even come to this conclusion that this is needed? Because I don't think the majority are there yet.
So, great question, by the way. If you look at our team, first and foremost, I think it's grounded in the team that we've pulled together. We are a team of, very experienced entrepreneurs in the wealth tech space. We are a team of very experienced engineers in the wealth tech space. And we are a team of data scientists that are data scientists who are heavyweights in academia, Harvard, MIT. These are individuals who, when I say heavyweights, like some of the most published academics in the field of causal analysis, in the field of causality and big data sets and machine learning. That's our team. So we're fusing some of, I would argue the best and brightest, and from a startup perspective in wealth tech, with the best and brightest in academia to solve for a pretty complex problem. Now, when you hear the word agentic, I've gotten to a point where I kind of like pause when somebody just throws it out there. Because do you really understand what agentic? It means AI that has agency, AI that you can trust to have that agency. And so my thesis is this. And by the way, we have an agentic framework within our application. And the framework is based on this thesis that which is, I don't think there's a company, I don't think there's an individual, at least in wealth, just because of the legal and regulatory bars that are set there, that is ready to hand the keys over to an agentic agent and just let it run autonomously and can trust with that it should have that agency. Now, will there be a day that happens? Absolutely. I have no question about that. How soon we get there, I think, is probably sooner rather than later. How quickly we're seeing innovation in this space. But our agentic framework enables the user to be able to toggle on or off specific agents, or to set sensitivity threshold for an agent, or activation triggers for an agent. And then it gives you that ability to, through our advisor IQ, our agent IQ dashboard, is that we surface these signals for each agent. How well are they performing their job? How good or how well have they predicted an outcome? And we measure all of that through VastAdvisor IQ. This is the difference, I think, between in platforms that are attacking AI in a different way, not just using AI to do what most people have been doing with AI, which is, can I make something more efficient? Can I save time in doing whatever XYZ job I'm doing? And that's where if we had a category, we see a bulk of AI innovation solving that problem. It's an efficiency problem that it's solving. We're trying to solve a knowledge problem at VastAdvisor. That's why I said we didn't build it VastAdvisor as a marketing tool. We built it as a growth operating system. So what we built is a system that is ingesting just an infinite number of data signals that we're putting into learning loops, so that we're training these agents to perform in a way where we're mitigating hallucinations, drift, latency, we're improving predictability. All of these things have an impact on outcome. We're talking about institutional knowledge. So every dollar spent on our platform to launch a marketing campaign targeting an ICP becomes a learning event. And that's very, very different than working with an agency or launching a campaign on Meta.
I think as AI entered our world a few years ago, it was more like strapping rocket boosters onto your vehicle, boat, car, roller skates, whatever. You're just like, I can go faster. What you're talking about is a whole new vehicle.
Yep.
Designed from the ground up. And look, I want to actually give a framework kind of thesis of my own around this, because what I realized is there's two kind of perspectives people have towards AI itself. And before I even say this, I want to say what my litmus test is. Can you ask AI to do the same thing twice and get identical results? If you can't, you don't have control over the AI.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah.
Especially in a regulated industry like wealth, it becomes a massive problem. Right.
Yeah. So here's my mindset, how it's evolved. I think there's two camps on this, and I still feel like I'm in the minority, but you're probably there. Tell me what you think. One is you treat AI like a tool set. And anytime you have a tool, it has a purpose, it has a job, it has this known thing you're going to make it do. Hence the rocket being strapped to your roller skates. It just makes you go faster. I think of it as a human.
Yes.
Okay. But here's why.
A group of humans.
A group of humans. Yes. Because everything you're describing, and the checks and balances and the learnings and the analyzing, did they do it right? And the sensitivity dialing up and down, those feel like human decisions. and they interact like human decisions. And in fact, if you think about how AI operates with you when you're talking to it, it feels the most human of any tech we've ever seen in our lives.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
starts to mirror you and reflect you. Oh, by the way, Ian, you're absolutely right. You're the brilliant idea. Yes, you're so right to ask me that, right?
I don't want the toxic affirmations. I want you to. So you hit the nail on the head. And I think what humans exhibit more than anything is the propensity to learn, the propensity to over time build knowledge, and that knowledge affect outcome or affect our behavior, right? And so from childhood to adulthood, we see that. That's probably one of the most defining elements of being human. And as we grow and scale, is just how our knowledge grows and scales, and how that changes our capabilities and our ability to have empathy and knowledge and to be able to have a job and all of these things. And so I think that's probably one of the most important attributes that we sought to build within our platform, is the ability to be able to capture knowledge and learn from that knowledge and improve the outcome over time. So when you think about all of the knowledge within an RIA, all of it, and all of the different component parts, from the CEO to the advisors to the marketing teams to the front desk person, right? And all of the different kind of systems and workflows that they utilize, and how disaggregated that is. And where is there a central source of truth within any RIA? I would argue no. And I would argue that what we're doing is to present, at least in the front office, a unified way to do that, a unified way to be able to capture and compound institutional knowledge for the RIA. Because I think in the next decade, it won't be won by firms with the best marketing. It's going to be won by firms that have the fastest learning and the ability to compound the knowledge that they have. I think, in a world where everyone has access to AI,
Right.
Those that harness AI to compound learning and institutional knowledge will win. It's the new competitive moat, I would argue. So
that's a really good point. And over time, since I've been interviewing people on my show, I've always talked about AI. I've learned, like you said, we all have access to the same Chat GPT, Gemini, et cetera. What makes us different then? And my answer has been the data. If you look at what data you uniquely have access to versus me, right? The LLM's not being trained on the Department of Defense classified materials. They're not being trained on Kellogg's cereal eaters, et cetera. They're being trained only to the extent you have the data and you train them yourself. So I looked at it and said, what data does Quick have?
Right.
We've built over 100,000 forms. We have all that data building forms. Right. Nobody in the world has that data. So what can I do with it?
That's right.
And now you've introduced kind of an elevated concept of it, which is it's not just data, it's compound learning.
That's right.
I think that's really elegant, Ian. I mean, I'm going to take this as a whole another way of looking at this because, look, in my own company, we're in a process right now using AI to document all of our code repositories. Why?
Smart.
Why? Why would we do that, right? We've never had to do that before, so why are we doing it now? It's not like it's going to go to end consumers. I don't want to see my source code. No, if I onboard another person to my team, they need to be able to figure out what our code does faster and easier.
And that person might be an agent that's writing code.
It might be an agent. Oh, it's going to be an agent. Come on.
Yeah, it's likely going to be an agent. You're like versus what? Hiring more human capacity.
Oh, no, I'm hiring more humans too. Don't get me wrong. I love the humans, but
depends on what the role is.
It does depend on the role. This is true. I love what Jeff Woods, who's an author of the AI Driven Leader. He was on my show as well. Sorry, I've named out a bunch of people for my show, but it's all been relevant. Jeff has said a job is a set of skills applied to tasks and work, right? So the job can change because the tasks can change, the skills can change. So don't be threatened by AI, in other words.
Right.
And now I'm looking at software development and things like that, and it's transforming and changing. I still need high quality people to do that work. But now let me take it back to VastAdvisor. What you've described to me is you have invented a very robust process that takes an entire team of people who are actually AI people, if you will, that wasn't possible before because only AI can do this. But nobody's buying your product getting a single agent that has this one LLM input. They're getting this choreographed kind of ensemble of skill sets and behaviors that you had to create. I'm sorry to
Well,
promote
that
business much. I don't
that
usually do that,
plus
but
a fine-tuned model at the enterprise level and at the RIA level. That's really important. So it's the
yeah,
orchestration of the agents through the workflows, but it creates what we call the advisor intelligence loop. So it loops back into a system and retrains these models,
yeah,
and improves upon these models. And it gives us the ability to be able to enable a new model release, and then track lifts in in conversion rates, or a drop in your cost per click or your cost per acquisition, or your ability to be able to more precisely target an audience. We'll be able to track that. We'll be able to expose how well your model is performing against the cohort median, right? So, and it's all about how your model and the signal intelligence we capture from your model helps us to improve that model. So it is about learning speed. It's about compounding institutional knowledge and intelligence. That's why I don't talk about VastAdvisor as a marketing platform. We're far
no.
from it.
Yeah, you are far from it. And I really think that when we talk about emerging tech with AI,
Yeah.
the true value is what you've described. You have
Yeah.
built a system that involves so many moving parts and pieces, as well as intelligence, that you just can't replicate easily. You have
Right.
a big competitive moat from your own product standpoint.
Right.
And second, this wasn't just strap on AI and let's go. This wasn't just a quick
Right.
fix and let's go faster. In fact, I'm finding out something else just over this past weekend, to be honest, that with what I've built in terms of software development, that's autonomous software development, in order to perfect it and make it better, it has to actually go slower as a result.
Yep.
Now, the outcome is faster because I'm not reiterating and revising and fixing because I solved a lot of quality problems, but
Yep.
I went slower up front, which is amazing to think, oh, AI is going to go slower. Yes, with better quality results.
Yeah, less lines of code, better outcomes from the code written. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
amazing.
one other question about your product.
Yeah.
Is AI, is there an entry point in your product where people are actually talking to AI and sharing their data with AI, or is it all behind the scenes to give them this intelligence and help them make decisions? Or is it both?
A great question. So we've designed within VastAdvisor AI to do a lot of the heavy cognitive lifting. All right, throughout all of the different kind of component parts of or the features within our platform. I haven't really talked about specific features yet, but we've designed AI to do the heavy cognitive lift. That being said, it's critically important that there are human in the loop elements from the start to the end in every aspect of every use case that our platform solves for. And so, when we, for example, when we preload in ICPs, we're putting the advisor in a position to be able to modify or add to those ICPs. When an advisor, and then we provide intelligence overlays, like really insightful intelligence with respect to audience sizing, which is the best platform to reach an audience, what type of CAC efficiency can they achieve by targeting an audience in a specific way. And when they begin the process of actually building a campaign, again, you're going to have AI on our platform doing a lot of the cognitive lift. It's going to say, okay, great, which ICP do you want to start with? And the human is a critical element to all of this. So we're asking the human we could have AI do all of this. We could say, nope, because it's all data driven. We have,
Sure.
with every single ICP, we have a fit score assigned to that ICP. And that fit score is how well, based on the profile of the firm and your service offering and your fee rate and and your geographic profile and the specific ICP associated with that, we have a fit score that says this ICP fits better than this ICP. And so we could have AI just look at the fit scores, automatically pick the ICP, and then automatically begin the campaign development process, which is, great. We have an ICP. What's the value proposition we want to articulate to that ICP? What's the services offering we want to present to that ICP? What's the emerging marketing trends that we see, either as headwinds or tailwinds in targeting that ICP? And then what are the campaign themes? And then what's the channel mix and messaging strategy? And then what's the daily budget, the optimal daily budget that drives the optimal, CAC multiple? Our AI does. I mean, so in each one of those stages, it's a 5-step process. You have AI generating all of the outcomes, but we ask the human to select. All right, great. Which campaign theme do you want? And we give a resonance score for each campaign theme. Great. So what's the channel mix and messaging strategy? Our AI will pre-select the most optimal channels, but you can still add in any additional channels that you want or take away from a channel. And then when we present the optimal daily spend to target that, and we give you the optimal CAC multiple, you can dial that budget back or up based on what your constraints are. And then, we get into our platform building out automatically all of the campaign assets, everything from the copy, the creative. It does a complete compliance review. That's part of the workflow, not an afterthought or something that you do as a last step. It's embedded within the workflow. And so the human in the loop element is such a critical component to the experience that somebody has in the app.
I love that you've realized that humans are the ultimate gatekeepers.
Yes.
You have to, because I've seen this. I did this one enhancement to my framework for building software where I brought in what's called red team, blue team.
Yep.
And the red team is a different team of people with their own personas of behaviors, et cetera, where they critique the work that we're doing and they give feedback. Well, my first try at this, they went off and had a conversation without me. It was funny. I was watching a transcript written and they made a bad assumption, Ian, and they went off so deep on that assumption.
Yep.
And when they finally shut up, I got to talk. I said, guys, you've made a terrible assumption. That would never happen. Oh, then everything we've done is wrong. I'm like, okay, let's retool this. You need to keep me in the loop here as the human.
Yep. Check in and validate before you make a core assumption and move on. Absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's really, really awesome that you're putting all this together. Dude, we should keep talking. We're getting to the end and I have to wrap up at some point. I know you and I are going to go to barbecue with Mike and hang out and talk more about all this stuff. Maybe we'll come back for another show and talk about it further because this is just fascinating. So let me switch gears. Before I get to my last question, what's the best way for people to find and connect with you, Ian?
Oh, thank you. Well, LinkedIn, obviously you can do a search on LinkedIn, Ian Karnell, or you can search VastAdvisor or VastAssembly. You'll find us that way. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. Love those connections. You can email me directly at ian@vastassembly.ai. There's a reason there's two different names. And those are probably the two best ways. Or you can go to the VastAdvisor website and you can click. If you click on scheduling a demo, it goes directly into my calendar. So that's another way to schedule with me directly. LinkedIn's another way. My calendar link is right in my profile. So.
Okay, 30 seconds. VastAssembly, tell me about it.
Yeah, VastAssembly is a holding company. So the idea here is that I anticipated that we were going to do some really special work in solving for a very specific use case in wealth. But that it would translate to other adjacent markets within financial services, banking, insurance, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so when we started to develop the code, we wanted the code to be written and owned by VastAssembly. It's essentially a venture platform where we can bring in, if we wanted to, outside venture capital to accelerate the growth of that platform and other adjacent markets inside of financial services, outside of financial services, and we license the code to the operating company, VastAdvisor. So when we end up exiting from VastAdvisor as an opco, the buyer gets to keep that code set. They can fork it. They can do whatever they want with it. But the core code that we've developed to be these AI agents, all of the IP, the data, we can then take and apply to the next adjacent market sector or into a completely different market sector if we wanted to. That's why.
So I told you, entrepreneur.
So VastAssembly.ai is essentially the venture website that we have for the two companies. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Okay, awesome. Here's my last question.
Yeah.
Who has had the biggest impact on your leadership style and how you approach your role today?
Well, I mean, I think there it takes a village, right? I think there are a number of people that have had the biggest influence. I mean, my twin brother, Jeremy Karnell, who's still at Envestnet, who acquired our last company, is head of data solutions over there, has always had probably the biggest impact in my life in helping to shape my own leadership style. He was the CEO of Trulytics, which was the company that we sold to Envestnet. And to be part of that company, to watch how he navigated some really tricky times during the startup and the scaling of Trulytics to the time that we successfully exited from that company with Envestnet, really taught me some amazing lessons in leadership. And so I credit my twin brother quite a bit for that. But there are other people like my business partners, Phil, and one of my newest, the newest additions to the team, our chief data officer, Dr. Ido Araldi. When you think about the sophistication and the way that we're approaching AI and fine-tuned models within our platform, and how we are articulating a very different value proposition than most AI solutions out there in wealth tech or outside of wealth tech, I credit him. He was a former business partner of mine as well. I met him when he was the head of, he was a Harvard professor at the time when I met him. And so,
Nice.
He's had a huge influence. And then, people like Danny Fava and Jason Piera, both advisors and investors in Vast. Danny is the chief strategy officer at Carson. Jason runs Woodgate, an RIA out of in Canada, out of Toronto, a very successful one, and he's a big influencer in this space as well. And so, both of those individuals have had an amazing influence over how we've sharpened our value proposition, validating a lot of the ideas that I bring to them, of saying, "Hey, look, this is the problem we're thinking about solving. Is this right?" And then really helping to refine that, to help me mold that, so that I don't go down rabbit holes that I learned these lessons the hard way later. So I credit them as well.
Oh man, these people along the way are so important to how we develop.
So critically important. Yeah.
I mean, like one entrepreneur to another, we're like unbridled horses quite often. And if somebody's not helping us stay straight.
The scar tissue I have all over my body from not having that in the past has taught me to make sure that you have that as an entrepreneur. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. All right. I hate to wrap this up. I have to do it. I want to give a huge thank you to Ian Karnell, founder and CEO of VastAdvisor, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out Ian's website at vastadvisor.ai. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we make processing forms easy. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. We'll click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. Ian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Rich, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.